welcome everyone to the daily news analysis of 28th of September 2023। तो आज के इम्पोर्टेंट आर्टिकल पहले देख लेते हैं। हीट जॉब्स ऑन फॉरेन सॉइल नॉट इंडियाज पॉलिसी एस जयशंकर। देन मणिपुर गवर्नमेंट एक्सटेंड्स APSPA in hill district for 6 months। Then Bihar से second tiger reserve to come up in Kaimur sanctuary। Timeless quest G20 से screen over Mazdoor's right। Then from women's reservation to gender equality, when India Canada ties were reset, why are tigers dying in Nilgiri district? Huge possibility for India US to back each other as a Shankar. India aging elderly to make up 20% of population by 2050 according to UNFPA. Then Indian Navy unveil problem 2.0 next week. Vice Chief. Then ultra long G-Sec to see good demand from insurer pension fund in H2। तो ये 12 सारे आर्टिकल्स हैं, पहले देख लेते हैं। हीट जॉब्स ऑन फॉरेन सॉइल नॉट इंडियाज पॉलिसी। In the latest round of sparring between India and Canada over the killing of Khalistani separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia last June, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that the Indian government had told its Canadian counterpart that it was not its policy to engage in such act. Mr. Jaishankar added that Canada had a very permissive environment as far as secessionist activity was concerned. We told the Canadians that this is not the government of India's policy. Mr. Jaishankar said about the allegation of India's involvement in Nijjar's death. The Canadians were also told that if they had any specific information, the government was open to looking at it. The minister added. Mr. Jaishankar was speaking at an event at the Council of Foreign Relations in New York, moderated by Kenneth Juster, a former US ambassador to India. Organized crime. Seeking to provide context to situation, Mr. Jaishankar said that the Canada had significant amount of organized crime relating to secessionist forces, that is supporters of India related secessionist movements such as Khalistani cause. We have actually been badgering the Canadians, he said. We have given them a lot of information about organized crime leadership which operates out of Canada. The minister added that India had made several extradition requests of Canada. Our concern is that it is really a very permissive because of political reasons, Mr. Jaishankar said, adding that India's diplomats have been threatened and its consulates attacked. He noted that there has been interference in India's politics, often justified on the grounds of concerns about democracy. Canada and India has extended diplomatic fire over the past week, requiring each other to downsize their missions and exchanging sharp words. Canadian government officials had, even as recently as Tuesday, said that they were concerned about foreign interference in Canada's politics. Asked for a comment on the reported sharing of intelligence between Five Eyes countries on Nijjar's killing, and report that the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation had warned certain persons about threats to their lives after the incident. Mr. Jaishankar said, I am not part of the Five Eyes. He added, I am certainly not part of FBI. The Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance comprising Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and United Kingdom and United States. When asked if he was provided with any evidence by the Canadian government linking Indian government agents to Nijjar's alleged killing, especially evidence intercepted communication, Mr. Jaishankar did not clearly confirm or deny whether he had seen such documents. Are you asking if the Canadians gave us documents? He said. When asked again if the Canadians had given him or the Indian government a document regarding India's intercepted diplomatic communications, he said, I had said that if somebody gives us specific or relevant information, we are prepared to look at it. Mr. Jaishankar was again pressed on whether he had received the evidence of purported intercepted communication. If I had, would I not be looking at it? He said. He was part further for a yes or no, at which point Mr. Juster, the moderator, intervened. The next time, Manipur government extended ASPSA in Hill district for 6 months. The Manipur government on Wednesday extended the imposition of Armed Forces Special Power Act (APSPA) in the whole state, except in the jurisdiction of 19 police stations in the 7th district of Imphal Valley for another 6 months. The disturbed area status under the Act will remain applicable in all the hill districts which are dominated by tribal communities. However, since 2022, the APSPA has been gradually withdrawn from the valley district which are dominated by the Meitei community due to a significant improvement in the security situation. The state government's notification maintaining this status quo is applicable from October 1. It comes despite the army's demand for the reimposition of AFSPA in the valley district, arguing that its absence had hampered operations against insurgent groups after a lull of many years. These groups are said to have regained a foothold in the state during the current wave of ethnic violence, mostly operating from Myanmar. They advocate the secession of Manipur from India. The National Investigation Agency had registered a suo motu case on July 19 to investigate a transnational conspiracy by Myanmar-based leadership of this terror outfit to wage a war against the government by exploiting the current ethnic unrest. The state government is now mulling a non-one district, one force deployment of security forces for better operations other than the state policy. Around 40,000 central security forces, including the army, have been deployed in the state. The notification by Manipur government said that detailed assessment of a ground situation could not be done as the sister security agency are preoccupied in maintenance of law and order. The notification added that the issue of declaration of disturbed area status is very sensitive and may likely attract public criticism and resistance if proper care is not taken. Keeping in view of above the overall law and order situation in the state and the capability of the state machineries, the state government has decided to maintain status quo on the present disturbed area status in the state of Manipur, excluding the area falling under the 19 police stations, the notification said. The 1958 law gives unbridled power to the army and the Central Armed Forces CAPF deployed in the disturbed area to kill anyone acting in contravention of law, to arrest people and search any premises without a warrant, and protection from prosecution and legal suits without the union government's sanction. Both the state and union government can issue notification regarding AFSPA. Currently, the Union Ministry of Home Affairs has issued disturbed area notification only for Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh. The notification for Manipur and Assam have been issued by their respective state government. Then next we have Bihar. Bihar's second tiger reserve to come up in Kaimur Sanctuary. Bihar is all set to get its second tiger reserve in Kaimur district by the end of the year of or early 2024. The state is home to Valmiki Tiger Reserve in West Champaran district. Officials of the State Forest Department said they are working on obtaining the National Tiger Conservation Authority approval for declaring Kaimur Wildlife Sanctuary as a tiger reserve. The NTCA had in principle approved our proposal in July for the tiger reserve. The department has now started preparing for final proposal to be sent to the NTCA for its formal approval. According to additional principal chief conservator of forest wildlife Prabhat Kumar Gupta, as per the NTCA report, the tiger population in BTR at present stand at 54 as against 31 in the 2018 Defense Forest. Kaimur district primarily comprises two landscapes, the hills known as Kaimur Plateau and the plains on the west, which are flanked by the rivers Karmanasa and Durgavati. It has a dense forest cover and is home to tigers, leopards and Tinkaraj. According to the officials, the forest in Kaimur are the biggest in the state, spanning 1134 square kilometer and including the 986 square kilometer Kaimur Wildlife Sanctuary. At 34%, the district also has the highest green cover. The district shares boundaries with Jharkhand, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. Till 1995, tigers were regularly spotted in the Kaimur Hills. After a gap in 2017, though then district forest officer Satyajit Kumar officially intimated the state government of their reappearance. An official of the Environment, Forest and Climate Change Department said that in an earlier proposal, 900 km was identified as a tiger habitat, but after the NTCS objections, it has come down to 450 km. Then next way the G20 screen over Mazdur's right. Mazdurs, they are right. On September 9, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reading of the final declaration of the G20 summit was a political win for him and diplomatic victory for India. The African Union was granted G20 membership and a sense of togetherness among the global south was palpable. However, there were fears that a joint communique would not be issued as the Russia-Ukraine war was ongoing and a divided interest of the G20 members would affect it, but Mr. Modi made it happen. He softened the language from the Bali G20 document criticizing Russia, kept Ukraine out of the summit, skipped the issue of fossil fuels, read out the 83 paragraphs of the New Delhi Declaration, and symbolically handed over the gavel to Brazilian President Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva, who will now preside over G20. Unfortunately, India missed a great opportunity to protect worker rights and advance the welfare of the worker during the G20 summit. Despite the G20's Labour 20 L20 coalitions of G20 leaders concerned about workers holding two meetings in India, it is unfortunately India has made a great opportunity to protect worker rights and advance the welfare of workers during the G20 summit. Despite the G20 Labours 20 L20, a coalition of G20 leaders concerned about workers holding two meetings in India, it is a matter of concern that the L20 was headed by the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, a BMS, a trade union affiliated with the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. In short, the L20 was politicized. India's choice of BMS had rigged the International Trade Union Confederations, a confederation of global trade unions, and they boycotted the meetings. In the past, the L20 has been headed by the ITUC. However, this time it was ignored and the chair was given to the PMS, which prioritizes right-wing politics over workers' interests. This incident itself reveals how serious the Indian government was about workers' issue. At the G20, the PMS is not an independent trade union in the absence of ITUC. The L20 discussed portable social security schemes in data collection for these schemes, addressing skill gaps in two meetings, and had some words on the platform workers. An exploitative labor system, the Indian government should have taken the opportunity to address the serious issues facing workers in India, such as forced labor, modern day slavery, and the kafala system in the Arab Gulf, where some 9 million Indians are working under exploitative working conditions. The Arab Gulf countries follow an exploitative labor system called the kafala system, which ties migrant workers to their employers. The system makes it difficult for migrant workers to leave their jobs or change employers and it increases the risk of forced labor and modern day slavery by politicizing the L20 with the BMS and ignoring the ITUC. The Indian government missed a chance to make a real difference in the lives of workers. Portable insurance schemes are important, but they are not enough. Workers also need job creation, decent working condition, equal pay, gender equality, and the elimination of forced labor and child labor and to modern day slavery and the protection of their rights and the welfare of their families. It would have been a relief for the Indian working class, especially in the Arab Gulf. Had these issues been prioritized and debated at the G20. Saudi Arabia, which hosts over 2.5 million Indian workers, is a permanent member of the G20. Oman and the United Arab Emirates, which were invited to the summit, had have nearly 8 lakh and 3.5 million Indian workers respectively. India is the world's largest migrant sending country with an estimated 13 million workers abroad. Of these, an estimated 9 million are working in exploitative conditions in Arab Gulf. But the exploitation of Indian workers is not limited to the Arab Gulf in India itself. Workers in a number of industries including textiles, bricks, steel, shrimp farming, copper manufacturing, stone cutting, plantation, face forced labor, and modern day slavery. According to the Work Free Foundation, there are an estimated 27 million people trapped in modern day slavery in G20 countries, of whom 11 million are in India. Many would be surprised with the term forced labor and modern day slavery. According to the International Labour Organization, forced or compulsory labor is all work or service which is extracted from any person under the threat of a penalty and for which the person has not offered himself or herself a vulnerability voluntarily. It must be noted that India has signed and ratified the ILO's forced labor conservation known as C29. In other words, forced labor is different from substandard or exploitative working condition. Various indicators can be used as ascertained when a situation amounts to forced labor, such as restriction on workers' freedom of movement, withholding of wages or identity documents, physical or sexual violence, threats and intimidations, and or fraudulent debt from which workers cannot escape. Not just an Indian problem. My recent investigative experience of forced labor in the shrimp industry in Andhra Pradesh suggests that workers who are paid less or unpaid for overtime under the threat of being fired if they ask for it are victims of forced labor. Workers who are forced to work until they have paid off a loan they took from the company are also victim of forced labor. Companies that withhold workers' identity documents such as Aadhaar card or ration card or and deny them access to the document when required until the work is done are also engaging in forced labor, issuing threats of sexual, physical and mental abuse in order to get the work done in also forced labor. Addressing forced labor and modern day slavery is important for India because the exploitation of workers would increase inequality, unstable social justice, and threaten democracy. In addition, we should not forget that the move by the Union government to consolidate the labor laws into four labor codes is drawing protest from the trade unions, civil societies, and workers who allege that it will have a negative impact on decent working conditions. In India, there are 530 million workers, of whom 430 millions are in the informal sector who are prone to different forms of exploitation, especially forced labor. This is not only an Indian problem, all G20 countries face a similar situation. If we do not address the situation of workers, we will not able to achieve the sustainable development goal targets for 2030, especially the first one which aims to eradicate poverty. Without decent working conditions, how can a worker earn a living wage and keep themselves and their families out of poverty? The Work Free Foundation also report that in 2021 the G20 countries imported goods worth 41 lakh crore that were made by the workers exploited under modern day slavery. We as Indians do not care much about who made the product. However, we should not forget that products made under modern day slavery will have the sweat, tears, and blood of workers who were forced to work under threat and inhuman conditions to make the products. Subject not discussed. The G20 should have discussed investment of job creation, compliances with the promise of the fundamental principle and right at work, ensuring minimum living wages and equal pay, social protection for all with official development assistance, establishing equality of incomes, gender and race, and coordinating actions on inclusion as the basis of a right-based development model realized through multilateral reform that deals with the threats to our peace and common security. Unfortunately, not much happened. Workers were ignored, just as green curtains were used to screen out the dwellings of the poor that were near areas of G20 summit events to avoid embarrassment and about the reality. Then next we have timeless quest. On September 24, NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft dropped off a capsule over the Earth, leaving it to be pulled down by the planet's gravity. It then deployed parachutes and gently landed in Utah in the US, where experts waited to, re- to retrieve the invaluable contents around the 250 grams of rocks and dust that Ulysses Rex had collected from the surface of 101955 Bennu. Bennu is an asteroid orbiting the Sun with a period of 436 days, such that it comes relatively close to the Earth once every 6 years or so. It is a carbonaceous asteroid with characteristics that suggest it is settled into its present form and composition within 10 million years after the solar system formations, surviving the last 4.5 billion years nearly intact. Such leftover pieces of debris are expected to reveal the system's ingredients and the signature of the process that combined them in different ways. Many scientists also believe that when rocks such as Bennu crashed into the earth, they delivered the compounds required for formation of life. Also, as Bennu could smash into the earth between 2178 and 2290, studying it could be informed of ways to prevent this collision. NASA launched Orisis Rex Origins Spectral Interpretation Resources Identification Security Region Regolith Explorer in 2016. 2 years later, scientists worked to place it into orbit around Bennu at an altitude of just 2 kilometers. Bennu itself was zipping through space at 28 kilometers per second on October 2020. Oris Rex landed just long enough to grab a sample of the asteroid from a pre-identified spot before flying back up in May 2021. It began its long journey back to Earth, where it dropped off the capsule holding Venus regolith. After this, it will reincarnate in its Osiris apex after two rendezvous with the silica-rich asteroid 99942 Apophis in 2029. The Osiris mission has two identities. In times, it works alongside Japan's two Hayabusa missions, which have collected the returned samples of 25143 Itokawa and 162173 Ryugu to expand our knowledge of the solar system's history. Osiris in NASA's third element of its New Frontier program after New Horizon to explore the Kuiper belt and Juno to study the planet exerting the largest gravitational influence in the solar system, while studies of Bennu include significant commercial components such as opportunity for space mining and impact mitigation technology. They also participate in more timeless quest to find out where life came from and what is fate could be with Orisis. capsule, humankind virtually gets to hold infinity in the palm of the hand. An HY for from women's reservation to gender equality. From women's reservation to gender equality. Last week, Parliament passed the Women's Reservation Bill, which provides one-third reservation for women in the Lok Sabha and Legislative Assembly. Data from the Inter-Parliamentary Union shows that the share of women in parliament in India is around 15%. India ranks 141 out of 193 countries on this count. Even Pakistan, South Africa, and Kenya have higher share of women representatives. Over the last 27 years, there have been several efforts to introduce the Women's Reservation Bill in the Parliament. Such efforts faced opposition from different quarters that there is a strong moral imperative to increase women's representation is beyond the debate. The smooth passage of this law shows consensus around this issue. Reservation for women in election to the local bodies in India has resulted in increasing their participation in governance. Research by Tanya Jakimau of the University of the New South Wales and Niraja Gopal Jayal shows that, contrary to popular beliefs, elected women representatives have over time asserted their presence in spite of the interference from male family members. A similar outcomes may also be seen in higher elected bodies. Delimitation exercise, however, implementation of the present law is contingent on the conduct of the next census and the subsequent delimitation exercise. Census and delimitation are not purely administrative eventualities. There has been a freeze on delimitation since 1976 in order to provide a level playing field for states to contain population growth. The southern states have been more successful in reducing population growth through a series of measures focused around women empowerment. It is now well understood that higher education among girls, increased female labor force participation, and greater financial autonomy among women directly correlate with lower fertility rates. Ironically, states which have improved indicators around women empowerment would now stand to lose seats to parliament if a delimitation exercise is held. Another central issue revolves around the legality of the contingency clause itself, whether a law, let alone a constitutional amendment, can be cognizant upon a certain future event requires determination by the constitutional courts. It is strange that a much needed and unanimous legislative reforms is now inextricably tied to another future law which may not be dealt with until after the next general election to the Lok Sabha. Societal approach in sight of law and its laudable intent. The ultimate game changer lies in changing societal approach to gender roles. Representation of women to elected bodies must necessarily be seen in the larger context of female labor force participation in India, which is abysmal by any standard. Real and substantive gender justice will only be achieved when there is an equitable and fair sharing of household chores and domestic responsibility, which are all aspects of unpaid labor. Recent research from the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation's Time Use Survey 2019 shows that the 97 minutes spent daily by men on unpaid domestic services for household members. Women spend 299 minutes. Women spend 134 minutes on average daily on unpaid caregiving services for household members as compared to the 76 minutes spent by men. It is clear that the women bears a disproportionate burden of household responsibilities. This is a result of a patriarchal societal mindset which will need to change if women are to fully and effectively participate in the labor force, let alone hold the highest elected representative positions. In this context, government programs which recognize unpaid labor done by women within households, such as the Magalyar Urimai Thogai in Tamil Nadu are designed to recognize and address the vast gulf is unpaid household labor. The Urimai Thogai scheme is a monthly cash transfer program. It is devised not as the largesse but an obligation to women who carry a disproportionate burden in the household. While Tamil Nadu has already a greater number of women in the active labor force in comparison with the rest of the country, this scheme, along with the free bus passes for women, is expected to drive numbers of over the next 2 decades. Substantive justice. Nevertheless, when the proportion of women in higher elected bodies increases in accordance with the present law, questions still remain with regard to building capacity for first-time representatives. Initiative in other countries offer an interesting case study on sustaining women in the political arena. Emily's list in the US has been providing campaign guidance, membership and building capacity for women as they enter politics. Active for nearly 4 decades, Emily's list has helped elect 201 members of the Congress, equivalent to House of People, and 20 governors, similar to Chief Minister. Regardless of whether political parties actively groom women leaders, it is now the duty of the government to build capacity and ensure that the reservation model leads to successful outcomes. The role of the National Commission for Women and the Parliamentary Committee of Empowerment of Women need to be significantly revised to ensure that the women reservation law does not stay a symbolic gesture. Similarly, the recognition of unpaid labor and an equitable sharing of household duties will ultimately dictate whether substantive reform in gender equality is achieved. Next, when India-Canada ties were reset. As ties between India and Canada plummet to their lowest point since 1980s, former diplomats say that a change in Canada's responses to the Khalistan issue are necessary for any future recent reset in ties, pointing to the G10 apology by the then Canadian Prime Minister as an example addressing families of the victims of 1985 Air India Kanisk flight A182 which exploded over the Irish coast after a bomb placed in the luggage went off, for which Khalistani separatist operatives were convicted. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper said he was sorry on behalf of the Canadian government. The apology, some wounds are too deep to be healed even by the remedy of time, the Mr. Harper said the Air India Memorial at the Humber Bay Park in Toronto on the 25th anniversary of the terror attack, where he admitted for the first time that the bombing was an atrocity conceived in Canada, executed in Canada by Canadian citizens, and its victims were themselves mostly citizens of Canada, despite 280 of the 329 on board. The Kanisk being Canadian citizen, the Prime Minister at the time, Brian Mulroney, had extended condolence to Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, leading to criticism from the Indian community in Canada. Since the attack, India has expressed its outrage over the slow pace of investigation and trial, which delivered its verdict in the case only in 2005. Therefore, it was particularly significant that Mr. Harper went on the address fellow political leaders, saying they must not to reach out to, but rather carefully to and systematically marginalize those extremists who seek to import the battles of India's past to Canada. Change of heart. Three important events led up to what experts refer to as Canada's change of heart in 2010. The first was 1911 attacks in the US in 2001, after which the Canada signed on to a number of terror conventions, abjuring officially a policy of being soft on what it is saw an freedom movement and allowing those fleeing terror charges from several countries including India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh into Canada. The second was the 26/11 Mumbai attacks in 2008 which hardened India's resolve. The third was Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit for the G20 summit in Toronto and a chance to Research ties no Indian Prime Minister had visited Canada since 1973, mainly due to tensions over the Khalistan issue. And although it was a multilateral summit visit, the bilateral meeting with Mr. Harper saw a number of agreements signed, which may think was only possible due to the apology given by him a days earlier. In the joint statement during Dr. Manmohan Singh's visit in 2010, the very first issue raised was terrorism and Kaniski bombing. Then came the big breakthrough on civil nuclear cooperation, which marked a 180-degree turn in Canada's position on cooperation with India in this sector, said Pankaj Saran, former Deputy National Security Advisor who served the Prime Minister Singh's office in 2010 and now runs the Nordstrat think tank in Delhi. The shift and the subsequent visit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2015 changed India-Canada cooperation substantially. Trade doubled during the decade from about $5 billion to $10 billion. Investment from Canada shot up from $700 million to more than 55 billion and the two sides set up working groups on countering terrorism, improving strategy, energy ties, nuclear fuels, MOUs, and a number of other areas. However, diplomats say that after the election of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party and his dependence on the new Democratic Party led by Jagmeet Singh for his minority government has meant that the Trudeau's government does not share the previous government's approval of ties with Khalistan separatists. Reasons for tension: Canada and India should have enjoyed the closest of ties, yet that is not to be. The Khalistan issue continues to be devil the relationship with certain political parties, especially the liberal prioritizing their engagement with them over ties with India as they control a few parliamentary constituencies as a allegedly extend material and financial support to the latter parties. Former High Commissioner to Ottawa Vishnu Prakash told the Hindu, some like former Foreign Secretary Nirupama Rao said the situation is hard to repair as the Canadian record of tolerating the most egregious criminal activity by some extremist members of the Sikh community has continued despite denial by successive Canadian governments actions like the posters targeting Indian diplomats, holding a referendum for the Sikh diaspora and the troubled glorifying Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's assassination and even hitting the Air India 182 bombing mastermind have added to the tension when asked Mr. Trudeau has denied supporting hate speech but said that they will protect freedom of speech in the country. The kind of allegations that India has assassinated a Canadian in Canada has never been made before. Mr. Trudeau has gone too far and given that he started the row, he will have to find a way to end this, said a former diplomat who served during the Harper era and was to witness to the apology. This ties now, in contrast, has have hit what he calls the Greek bottom. The next is why are tigers dying in Nilgiri district? A total of 10 tigers, 6 cubs, and 4 adults have died in the Nilgiri since the middle of the August. The 6 tiger cubs died in 2 separate incidents, while the 4 adult tigers died in the 4 separate events with at least one suspected to have been poisoned. The inability of the state forest department to trace the whereabouts of the two mother tigers has raised concern among conservationists about the welfare of the animals. How did the tigers die? The first reported tiger death occurred on August 16 in the buffer zone of the Madumalai Tiger Reserve in Siriyur. After conducting a post-mortem of the remains, forest department officials said that they suspect that the corpse, believed to be only 2 weeks old, could have died due to starvation or umbilical infection. The second death was of an adult tigress in the Nadubhatam range in Nilgiri's Forest Division in August 17, with officials suspecting that the tigress died due to injuries after fighting with another animal. Another suspected incident of fighting is believed to have caused the death of four tigers, the second adult in the Kargudi forest range of MTR on August 31. On September 99, the two more tigers were found dead in Udhagai South Range near Avalanche in the Nilgiri Forest Division. One of the tigers, a sub-adult, was found with injury marks indicating that it too died due to a fight with another animal. However, the larger male found dead nearby had no apparent injuries. A search of the area's led forest department staff to the carcass of a cow that had been preyed upon by the larger tigers. After an investigation, a man was arrested for poisoning the carcass of the cow in retaliation for tiger hunting the animals. In a final incident on September 17, four tiger cubs were found dead over the course of 3 days in Coronado in Nilgiri North Range. Why are conservationists concerned? In February this year, the Forest Department arrested four poachers from Rajasthan who had allegedly poached a tiger in the areas surrounding Emerald Dam near Avalanche, a few kilometers away from where the two tigers were found dead. In addition, the inability of the Forest Department to track down the two mother of the six tiger cubs that died in Siriur and Coronado had raised concern over their well-being. Camera traps and a tiger tracker continue to look for the animals but with little logs. What are the reasons for the death? One of the theories put forward by senior forest department official is that the high density of tiger in the Madumalai Bandipur Nagarhole complex of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve is pushing population into the surrounding habitats. In the Mukurthi National Park, Nilgiri and Gudalur Forest Division, this leads to increased com- competition between animals and more fightings, resulting in more deaths. According to Nilgiri Division District Forest Officer S. Utham, the division is now home to 54 tigers, a significant population. In fact, tigers have been frequently recorded in the outskirts of the Udhagaman Dalam town multiple times over last few years. Conservationists worry that this increase in population could lead to more negative human-animal interaction in the near future. They emphasize the need to regenerate a degraded habitat that can be recolonized by the tigers' prey, such as sunbird, spotted deer, and the Indian goose. How are officials responding to alleged fears that poachers could be targeting tigers, and the forest department plans to set up anti-poaching camps in 6 forest ranges surrounding the Mukurthi National Park? There are also plans to begin annual monitoring of tiger population in the Nilgiri Forest Division with population size range of each individual animal and other parameters to be recorded for better management. They have also increased perambulation of areas surrounding key tiger habitats in Mukurthi and Mudumalai. Then huge possibilities for India, US to back each other according to Jaishankar. India and US have an enormous possibility to enhance each other's interest. According to the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, I think you will find convergences today far outweigh the divergence. He said, adding that he did not want to think of the India-US partnership in terms of limit, but rather in terms of possibilities. That is, looking at how much the countries could step on the gas. Mr. Jaishankar was speaking in New York at the Council for Foreign Relations following his address to the 78th sessions of The United Nations General Assembly (UNGA), the US is readjusting to the world. Mr. Jaishankar said part of this is a long-term consequences of its war in Afghanistan and Iraq. The other part is due to the world becoming more democratic and opportunities being more widespread. In Washington is getting into more fluid partnership, he said, citing the Quad as an example US is, where the US is in partnership with the two treaty allies, Australia, Japan, and one non-ally, India. The US and the India are looking at the world and addressing where real and potential partnership lie. The minister said the bilateral relationship had changed significantly in the past 5 years across the technology, people to people, security, economic, and political domains. The top three priorities Mr. Jaishankar identified technology, defense, and politics as the top three priorities for the relationship, highlighting the importance of the technology as a determinant of the balance of power in the world. Mr. Jaishankar said the India-US relationship had to focus very strongly on technology. The United States was an optimal choice for India, as per the minister who said the US too had a finite set of potential partners to work with. The technology partnership spilled over into defense and security. He said Mr. Jaishankar suggested that the India was a useful link between US and the global south, which had become very distrustful of global north. It is useful for US to have partners who frankly think well of the US and speak well of the US often behind your back, he said to laughter from the audience. Human rights. The interaction at the CFR included several testy exchanges between Mr. Jaishankar and those asking questions. The minister pulled back against the concerns around democratic and human rights backsliding in India and allegations that the government had not absolutely adequately and expeditiously responded to the crisis in Manipur, reiterating his position around India performing worse in terms of freedom and democracy indices published, for instance, by US think tanks. Mr. Jaishankar dismissed these reports, alleging an ideological bias. Many of these reports are actually riddled with inaccuracies, he said, adding, so I put it to you that there is an ideological agenda out there. India aging elderly make up to 20% of population by 2050, UNFPA report. With the decadal growth rate of the elderly population of India estimated at 41% and its share of the total population projected to double to over 20% by 2050, the United Nations Population Fund India in its 2023 India Aging Report has said that by 2046 it is likely that the elderly population will have surpassed the population of children aged up to 15 in the country. More than 40% of the elderly in India are in the poorest wealth quintile, with about 18.7% of them living without an income, the report said, adding that such levels of poverty may affect their quality of life and healthcare utilization. The report, unveiled by the Secretary Social Justice Saurabh Garg and UNFPA India representatives Andrea M. Ujnar here on Wednesday projected that the population of people aged 80 and above will grow at a rate of around 279% below 2022 and 2050, with a predominance of widowed and highly dependent very old women, a finding in line with the partner across several nations. The data showed that women on an average had a higher life expectancy at the age of 60 to 80 when compared with men, with variation across the state and union territories. For instance, in Himachal Pradesh and Kerala, women at 60 have a life expectancy of 23 and 22 years respectively, which is 4 years more than that of men at 60 in these states is compared with the national average differential of only a year and a half, the report said. However, life expectancy of women at 60 is greater than 20 years in the states such as Rajasthan, Haryana, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, Kerala, Himachal Pradesh, and the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, raising concern about their social and economic well-being. In the report said, further, the sex ratio number of female per 1,000 males among the elderly has been climbing steadily since 1991, while the ratio in the general population has been stagnating between 2011 and 2021. The ratio increased in India as a whole and across all regions, bearing the Union Territories and Western Indias in the northwest and the east. While the sex ratio of the elderly increased, it remained below 1,000 in both years, indicating that men still outnumbered women in these regions even at 60 plus years. This, however, is not true for the other regions, which has a bearing on the country's average. A case in point is central India, where the sex ratio went from 973 in 2011 to 1053 in 2021, implying that the women caught up with and outperformed the men in survival after 60 years over the decade. The report said inherently gendered poverty is inherently gendered in old age when older women are more likely to be widowed, living alone with no income and with fewer assets of their own and fully dependent on family for support. The report said, pointing out that the major challenges facing India's aging population are the feminizations and ruralizations of this older population, and that policies must be designed to suit their specific needs. To report The report noted that there was a significant interest rate variation in absolute level and growth, and hence share of elderly population as well, reflecting the different stages and pace of demographic transitions across states. Most states in the southern region and select northern states such as Himachal Pradesh and Punjab reported a higher share of elderly population than the national average in 2021, a gap that is expected to widen by 2036. The report said, while the states reporting higher fertility rates and lagging in demographic transitions, including Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, expect to see an increase in the share of elderly population between 2021 and 2036. The level will remain lower than the Indian average, the report said, compared with the southern and western India, central and northeastern regions have states with the younger groups, and as indicated by the aging index in the southern region, the old age dependency ratio elderly people per 100 people between 15 to 59 years was higher than the national average at around 20. As is true of Western India as 17, overall Union Territories 13, and the Northwestern region 13 reflected lower old age dependency ratio, it is said. Then next week, Indian Navy to unveil Problem 2.0. Next week, Vice Chief. The Indian Navy will release its updated Indigenization's roadmap named Problem 2.0 next week, which will provide an update on what has been achieved so far and the way ahead. Vice Admiral Sanjay Singh, the Vice Chief of the Naval Staff, said on Wednesday the Navy has surpassed its target set last year to develop 75 futuristic technologies in partnership with domestic micro, small, and medium enterprises and startups, and these will be unveiled at the second edition of the Swavalambha seminar and exhibition to be held on October 4 and 5. Vice Admiral Singh told persons these technologies and products are built to world-class standard, but at a much more economical cost as they are built in India. He added, last year the Indian Navy had committed to developing at least 75 technologies as part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. I am happy to inform you that the promises made last year have been fully met and even surpassed in some cases, primarily through the sprint initiatives supporting pole vaulting in R&D through innovations for defense excellence, and the naval innovations and indigenizations organization in the technology development accelerations cell. The Vice Chief said the Swavalambhan roadmap aims to collaborate coordination coordinate and develop new technology in partnership, he added. Then आज का जो लास्ट आर्टिकल है अल्ट्रा लॉन्ग जी सेट to see good demand from insurer pension funds in H2. India first ever is insurance of 50-year government bonds and 30-year green bonds can be easily absorbed by insurance farm and provident funds which are keen and have been looking for avenues to park long-term funds. Officially said the government aims to raise 6.55 lakh crore rupees through the sale of a bond in October-March. This would include 30,000 crore rupees of the 50-year security. The first such options by the central government. Long-term investors like insurer will have a natural demand for the 50-year paper. Most insurance companies require longer duration bonds for their asset liability management, said Churchill Bhatt, Executive Vice President at Kotak Mahindra Life Insurance. The insurance sector requested the 50-year papers insurance, he said, adding that the anchor for its pricing would naturally be current 40-year bond. Other market participants like provident funds and pension funds were also likely to actively participate in the bond auctions. Traders said the government also reintroduced green bonds for the second half. It aims to raise 20,000 crore rupees through such notes, half of which would be through the new 30-year papers. There are few public sector companies issuing longer term bonds, said Rahul Buskute, Chief Investment Officer at Bhartiya AXA Life Insurance. New avenues like long term green bonds would be some comfort of insurance companies in terms of regulatory compliances with investment in their desired duration. Sampath Reddy, CIO at Bajaj Allianz Life Insurance, said they invested in green bonds earlier and may choose to invest more in the second half as supply comes up. So friends, this is all for today and we will meet from tomorrow onwards with a new newspaper analysis. Thank you all. Thanks a lot.